The exhibition came about as an exploration of the origins of the center, almost like a kind of lifting up of the center to see what's there underneath it. So it's an exploration of the history of contemporary art at Ohio State, and in particular the history of a collection of contemporary art and the institution that collected that work here, called the University Gallery of Fine Art, which is effectively the WEX's predecessor. And I tell people that the University Gallery is, in a sense, the protagonist of the show. It's an exploration of its legacy. It's in the mid-1970s, around 1974-75, that Betty Collings comes to the University Gallery as its first independent director. And she's very interested in the breaking wave, the cutting edge of contemporary art on the West Coast, in New York, very attuned to developments in and around the art world, and is canny in her ability to figure out how to fund this collection. She begins to get grant funding from the National Endowment of the Arts, which allowed the purchase of works by living American artists. And that program, in combination with matching gifts from the university's development fund, begin to bring really significant works to the collection. In the year 1989, when the WEX is founded, part of the building that Eisenman designs includes a very state-of-the-art storage facilities for this collection. So in its birth moment, the WEX was always imagined as the place where the university's collection would live. And that transmission took place seamlessly. The collection went right into the vault, as we call it. However, the WEX as an institution developed a mission and a project that was really based on the display and even the making of new art. And so over the years, while the collection has, at moments, especially in the very early history of the WEX, the collection has been seen, it's just sort of gone to sleep for a little while. I wanted to bring the collection back into view for a couple reasons. One, it seemed like 3 decades was a long enough time to let it sleep. And I personally, as an art historian and as a curator, had a real fascination with it. And it just struck me that there was a story to that collection. It wasn't as simple as, random things had come in and out over the years. But this, at many cultural institutions, not just the WEX, this is a moment of self-interrogation, and part of that self-interrogation involves asking, where did we come from? What are we made of? And this exhibition contributes to that effort. There's another point of origin for this exhibition. I started working on it in August of 2020, and coming right off of the wave of protests sparked by the murder of George Floyd. And I was thinking a lot about campuses and what they are, and about the role of campus activists. It happens that the story of the University Gallery is in some ways very intimately tied to the story of student activism, right from the 1960s through the 1980s. Ohio State is the site of a massive and very significant student uprising in April and May of 1970. And that uprising really changes the coordinates of the university's development in the years thereafter. It cements support from the top of the university on down for reform. And reform means lots of things. It can mean reform to governance. It certainly means reform in the university's relationship with Black students and with women's studies, for example. But it also means cultural reform. And part of the story that the exhibition tries to tell has to do with the embrace at this university of not just contemporary art, but very radical art that tried to test the boundaries of what art could be, but also art that engaged politics very directly. This work represents for us a point of connection between the University Gallery and its program and the wider scene and sphere of cultural life at the university, specifically Black culture. Stell came to Ohio State in the very early 1970s and was part of the Black Studies department. Black Studies emerged out of those protests in 1970 and was part of the broader effort at the university to respond to student demonstrations and really acknowledge the centrality of Black voices in the life of the university. The painting comes out of his artistic practice, which was really focused on Black history in the longest and largest possible sense. This work refers to the Songhai dynasty, which was, a political entity in Africa operating in the 15th and 16th centuries, so going way back. And that sort of interest in the ancestral roots of Black culture, especially coming out of the Black Power movement of the 1960s and 70s, that interest converged with his work in and around contemporary art, and specifically abstraction. I mean, the work is an odd-shaped canvas. It looks a bit like a kind of 70s era feminist symbol, looks a little bit like Prince's logo, but it's an abstract work that is trying to think about how to use the language of abstract painting and the monumentality of abstract art in order to honor a legacy, both past but also present. Betty Collings was the first director of the university gallery. She was also an artist, and her interest as an artist really informed her work, her thinking as the director. She had a real focus on that place where the concerns of artists rubs up against the work of researchers in the wider sphere of intellectual activity. Remember, she's thinking a lot about what it means to run a contemporary arts institution at a major research university. So in her own artistic work, she had an interest in math and the sciences. And the work of Betty's that we've included in this exhibition, it's called Dance. It's a massive inflatable sculpture that comes out of her investigation of the helix shape and the geometry of the helix. Of course, the helix is part of the fundamental building blocks of organic life on the planet. It's the shape of DNA. And that shape she's taken as the starting place, the launching point for a whole series of inflatable sculptures. They're very simply conceived. They just take very simple geometric ring shapes and pair them, and the slight mismatch of those forms, rather than creating a seamless three-dimensional ring, they create this spiral shape. And the spiral, again, it's a preoccupation of hers that would carry her forward through the rest of her career. The work that you see here, it comes off the wall even if it doesn't quite come off the wall. It's not really a painting, it's not really sculpture, it is an aluminum relief. It's actually multiple pieces that are fitted together very carefully, and they're all painted in this sort of garish way. This work was shown in the very first exhibition of these sculptures in 1976. And Betty Collings was in New York on a buying trip for the university and goes to see this exhibition. And she calls her friend, the art critic Robert Pinkeswitten, who was an advisor to the gallery. She calls him and says, "Robert, get over here, you've got to see what Stella's doing." And they're both really entranced, and she picks this work for the collection. Because the acquisitions at Ohio State were made with the NEA, this gives this acquisition of the Stella the imprimatur of the US government. I mean, it really cements it as a verifiable government-approved purchase. The work fits in an interesting way with Collings's own interests as an artist. Although it looks to be, at first glance, this sort of wild assemblage of expressive shapes and forms with curlicues kind of flying out of the painting. And the name itself, Puerto Rican blue pigeon, it refers to the name of a species of bird. So you might imagine, a bird in flight about to take off. Well, actually, these shapes, those curlicues, are patterned after the irregular curves of a draftsman's toolkit. And so even though the work looks to be, this sort of rhapsody or melody that expresses the artist's own voice and perspective. It really is a very minimal composition and almost an engagement with the hard sciences. Stella thinking about the work of draftsmen at their table. The exhibition is called To Begin Again, and I hope that the show prompts a new sense of curiosity about the university and its history. Of course, I am really excited this exhibition brings new attention to this collection. It really is a singular collection. There's nothing else like it, certainly in Columbus. And it really is so much a part of the story, both of the university, certainly of the Wexner Center, but also of the city. And I just think that the show makes for an opportunity for audiences both to engage a past that for some visitors will be very familiar, but for many others will be unfamiliar and new and exciting and resonates with our own moment.